Okay.
This is just an intro of what we're going to do today.
What are we doing today?
Are we recording now?
We are recording now.
Okay. It's August 28, 2012, and we're on a nostalgic trip to Bremerton to visit the places where I was born and raised and had experiences in school, where our relatives lived, and where I worked in Bremerton, and we have some street scenes we want to revisit. I have some photos that were taken in 1950, and we're going to visit those same spots today. And we'll see where it goes from here. So our next stop is going to be, we get into Bremerton and probably in downtown.
We're aboard the Kitsap ferry?
We're aboard the Kitsap ferry right now, and we should be arriving in about 15 minutes.
Okay.
And it's the Kitsap because this is Kitsap County that we're in.
Okay.
This building here was the original Sears store. It was a huge store in the 50s, and was around for years and years, and it's been vacated now for years and years.
Was it anything after it was Sears?
I do not remember. This building you're looking at, American Financial Solutions, has been rebuilt from the days I used to work here. Hal's Camera Corner used to be here, and this is where I worked all during high school. My mother knew Mr. Galkin because she took care of the legal aspects of the camera store, and it was my first experience in sales, and I was pretty successful, and I actually sold a camera to George Weyerhaeuser, which took us by surprise because I actually called Seattle to get a credit check on George Weyerhaeuser.
Was that when the boss was gone and you
Yeah,
made
the boss was
that
gone, and he had trusted me, and so he let me and the other guy run the store one Saturday while he was on vacation. And he came back and saw George Weyerhaeuser's check in the case. He said, "Looked like you had a good sale." And I said, "Yes, I did." You know, and I sold him the whole bit. I started out with the sales pitch, and I sold him the most expensive movie camera we had. I sold him a projector and a screen and probably 10 or 15 rolls of film. And it was a huge sale for those days, like $300, and that was usually more than we would take in a whole day.
Oh, wow.
So I actually got a $20 bonus for making that sale at George Weyerhaeuser Jr. This is the Roxy Theater, which was a very popular theater in the 50s. And it was right across from the camera store, and Hal used to send me over right here to this candy station, and he always wanted me to buy him a Kit Kat. So that's how I know where the camera store was, because it was right across the street from the concession stand. And the Roxy Theater, so I saw a bridge from the River Kwai here, to give you an idea the kinds of movies used to be here. The other theater here in Bremerton, of course, is the Admiral, and we're going to see that a little later in this tour. Across the street from the Seattle First National Bank building, which is now the Kitsap Museum, but back in the 50s and 60s, it was Seattle First National Bank, and it was the first organization to offer me a job in 1962. In that year, I had two job offers, one from Seattle First National Bank for $400 a month, and then the Boeing company offered me a job for $450 a month. So I went to work for Boeing for the next 33 years. But it still says Seattle First National Bank building here, so it's one of the few buildings that still has the same facade here on 4th Avenue. We're standing in front of what used to be Lentz Plumbing and Heating. It was owned by the Lent family, and Donna Gay Lent and Doug Lent were both in my class. They had a big business here in Bremerton and was kind of one of the anchor businesses here in Bremerton. And Doug Lent actually had his own HVAC business, and I think he ran it out of Port Orchard. Yeah, but he is now retired also, but they are still active in our class reunions in 1954. They have not changed the facade here at all. It's the same facade. Okay, we're standing in front of what used to be the Oldberg's drugstore. We saw a picture of it on the ferries. Back in the 50s, you could still get a cup of coffee for 5 cents, and I think Bev saw, what'd you get for 73 cents?
Ham and eggs.
Ham and eggs were 73 cents.
78 cents.
And I remember coming down here for dinner when I used to work late at the camera store and got their 99-cent blue plate special.
The camera store is just right up the street.
And camera right up the street.
Yeah.
Look straight up the street and you're going to see
Oh, there we are.
And this is one of the shots we're going to try and duplicate. I believe it was taken on either this corner or down one, and we're going to do both. We're going to take a picture from here and then go down one more block and take it again.
Okay, where are we?
This used to be Brown's Music Store. Back in the days when they had records, you had little sound booths where you take the record into and play the record. It's also in the basement where they, like my music teacher, Ralph Manzo, gave voice lessons. So I came here for a few voice lessons. And this is where we bought records and sheet music and anything musical.
So we're on 32, and what street are we on?
Pacific.
32 Pacific, okay. Okay. So what are those buildings?
Well,
That's the Elks Club.
where Truman.
And down below it, the white building was Payless Drugstore. In 1948, at that far corner, President Truman came here for a little speech. And on that little balcony, my dad, William Hawes Sr., sat, and he said he could have punched him in the nose if he wanted to.
He was that close.
Yeah, he was a Democrat, so he didn't. So that's where Harry, and I was right in the middle of that intersection. In fact, there's a historical picture taken, that whole intersection being filled with people, and Harry Truman at the top, and I'm in the center of that crowd, although you can't make me out.
You know you're there.
But I knew I was there. I was on the way to my piano lesson. I remember that.
Was your piano lesson at this store we just walked by?
No, my piano lesson was over on Chester.
Okay.
But we'll get a closer look at that.
Okay.
In fact, the Elks Club is where we had teen dances also, and of course, Bill Hawes Sr. was very active. He was an exalted ruler of the Elks. And up above, they had full-time rooms for let, and that was part of the income for the Elks Club.
Is there a roof? Looks like there's a roof.
I do not know what's at the top of the roof.
You had to be a member maybe to...
Yeah. Dad brought me there on a couple of occasions after I turned 21. I got to go to what was called the Stag Club. In those days, they had a stag club where only men were allowed.
Okay.
Long gone by now. Now, as you turn around, right down here is where Dad used to have his real estate office, Larkin Realty.
Larkin Realty. Okay.
And as a matter of fact, where you see that barber pole, that was a barber shop when I was a kid. Now I have no idea what it looks like now, but that's right. I used to get haircuts down there. There used to be another theater across the street, but that whole block has been totally rebuilt. It used to be the Tower Theater. It's located on the north side of the street.
So 3 theaters all in one...
Oh, there was more than that. We had one, the Rialto, was down off of 2nd Street. It was there when I was a kid. And in Charleston, which is down on Callow, there was another theater, and for the life of me, I can't remember what the name of that one was.
Okay.
But there, at one time, there was, that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 theaters in Bremerton.
Do you remember about what the population might have been back then?
Bremerton's population has been very, very stable, except for the war years. Mm-hmm. In 1940, it shot up to about 80,000.
Wow.
But its typical population was around 20 to 30,000. Okay, back in 1948, Harry Truman visited Bremerton, and he spoke from the top of the old Payless drugstore, and he stood right in the corner at the top there. And this whole intersection was just filled with people. And I was standing right in the center of that intersection. and he gave a brief speech in 1948, and was quite a big deal here for Bremerton. That used to be the Elks Club in back, and that was the Payless drugstore.
And you worked at the Payless drugstore?
I worked at Payless during the Christmas breaks when I was going to the university.
Oh, during college, okay.
During break.
So the building's in good shape, it looks like.
Yeah, the Elks used to have the teenager dance there, and they also had graduation parties.
Okay.
So.
On June 10, 1948, while making a speech from the balcony above, Brother Harry S. Truman first heard the words, "Give him hell, Harry," shouted from the enthusiastic crowd assembled in this intersection. This phrase has become lastingly associated with our 33rd president and became his personal and political slogan. Okay.
And it's brother because he must have been an elk.
He must have been an elk, yeah.
Okay, 811 Chester is where Myrtle and Oscar Halverson lived, and Bob. They lived here all through the 40s and 50s. And downstairs you're going to see a little apartment. I remember her address was 811 and a half Chester Avenue, and it was a little bedroom apartment with a Chesterfield. And their bedroom was actually in the back part of the basement.
Oh, and that was where your grandma lived?
That's where Grandma Hawes lived.
Okay.
Your great grandmother.
All right.
Edith
And
Parsons.
when did someone lived with her? But that was before that. Then that would have been Jesse's. Yeah.
Yeah, Leonard was
Marcy.
part of the family, but I'm not sure when or if he lived here.
Okay. It might have been
but
before
Bob
this
lived
house.
here for a while. He had his bedroom here.
Okay.
And in the back, you'll see a little cinder stone building. That was Uncle Oscar's machine shop.
Oh.
He was very handy with his hands. And in the back, he had a wonderful garden. Had a peach tree and all kinds of things. But, so this is where the Halversons lived.
They always were gardeners.
Yeah. Even I know in their
Now the structure on top, that's been added.
That's been added.
And it looks like it's a garage or carport from the upper street,
backside.
Yeah,
which would not be their property.
it still has the address here, 811 and a half.
Oh. There we go. So where are we?
We are approximately at 6th and High Street. Grandpa Frederick actually built his home across the street. It was either the third or fourth house from the corner. Currently there are two houses. There would have been a third house and then Grandpa Frederick's house. He built it himself, and it was there probably until the 80s. And it was within blocks of our High Street house, so we used to walk to each other's house for visits on Sunday. And across the street right here where we're standing, there used to be a little restaurant where Mom and Dad wanted to go to the movies or something. They'd give Bill and I a buck apiece, and we'd come up here for the 99-cent blue plate special. So this was all, and of course the street was not that busy, and in fact this is the place where Stella Hawes lived when she drove the jitney.
Oh, okay.
So, and we do have some pictures of Mom on the back porch steps of the house that was located right here across the street.
So when did they move from that house?
When they died
Okay.
in 1950.
So I think you told me once one of your memories was your grandma bringing you an ice cream cone.
Yeah, she bought it somewhere here and walked all the way down High Street and brought me an ice cream cone. We're at the corner just off of High Street, 1 block away. Back in the 40s, this was a barrage balloon encampment. It had a small barracks and one barrage balloon that was cabled to a tether, and it was stationed here all through the war. Now our High Street house is just kind of kitty corner from here, about 2 blocks away, and it broke away. The barrage balloon broke away from its tether and floated over these homes here, and the cable swung down and broke the back door window of our house on High Street.
Oh, wow.
And of course they fixed it, and my mom came back and she baked a cake and brought it back to the soldiers that were living in the barracks here on this corner. Of course, this street was not here then. This was totally blocked off, and it was just had a small army encampment.
Okay. So first off,
You can start zero in on this.
So right now we're on 11th
And High
and
Street.
High.
And you can see how the house is perched here on probably about a 6-foot embankment. Well, you can see the level of it over here on the right. And the driveway went in here, and it still shows the driveway right here.
Okay.
And they came in and not only roomed the house, but they bulldozed it down to street level. So right now, we used to own this whole property. Standing on the corner of 11th and High Street, and I have a picture here of where our house used to be. You can see that this embankment was about a 6-foot embankment, and it was actually 2 lots when Mom and Dad bought it. I don't know if they had plans of selling it or what, but they never did anything with it. But this is the house where I grew up. I moved in when I was a child and 2 years old, and I lived here until 1950. So my growing up years were spent here. Years I spent through World War II and through junior high school, and before we moved up to the Preble house. About as wide. Well, that's the very left side of the house, probably.
Okay, the car's on the left side of the house. And then the house was where this hedge is?
Yeah, it probably started, but yeah, it was off the street. It was back a few feet. You can see where it was in relationship to the house behind it, and this house is still here. That's where Ted Crawford lives.
Now, who are the boys that were collecting metal?
Oh, that was Dean and Walter Childs, who lived in the house next door, which I think is available for demolishing or buying. We'll walk over there and take a quick look at it.
Okay. So right now he's standing in his yard from his childhood. And the car is at the very side of the house. 1012 High Street.
Now the house across the street at 1021 has been there forever, and it's always been the same color. It has never changed. And one of the young ladies that used to live there had a horse. And every once in a while she'd bring the horse in, and behind that house used to be an empty lot. And I remember her having the horse over there feeding it grass and sugar cubes.
Where were the cherry trees?
Cherry trees were probably right here. That picture of me in the birthday parade was probably taken right where I'm standing.
Okay.
Where was the cherry tree?
Cherry trees are right there. And there's an apple tree down there further.
Because there was a bank
cherry
that way too, wasn't there?
tree. Yeah.
Okay. So
And
that-
It looks bigger than I remember.
Yeah.
You picked the cherries to sell?
Yeah, we had right here on the corner. Bill and I had a little cardboard table, and we sold little sandwich bags full of cherries for 10 cents.
And sandwich bags were made out of wax paper?
Wax paper then, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, he got a contract for 20 pounds from a grocery store up the street across from where Grandpa Fredericks lived.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a big contract. He sold them for 20 cents a pound or something like that.
Nice.
So let's walk over and see the old Child's house. That's the only house that's remaining.
Okay. Wait, can you repeat that?
Right kitty corner here in that, what color is that? Yellow. In the backyard, someone had a teepee, and Bill and one of his friends put me inside the teepee and tied it from the outside so I couldn't get out. And then down one house over, they had a big box built with boards, a PT boat from World War II, and they had a little a hatch on the top. And then they put me in the boat, and then they put the lid down, put a rock on it so I couldn't get out. Well, that's what I get for being the baby brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, no wonder you pushed him off the porch a couple
Yeah.
times.
That was the McLaren's house down there. I don't remember the name of the person that lived at
The
Kitty
PT boat? Oh.
And when
Wait,
we lived
McLaren's
here,
had the PT boat?
Who had the
McLaren, right down at the second house.
the little one with the gray roof with
Yes,
the smokestack?
And when I lived here, that was a vacant lot across the street.
All right.
And this is where I caught the bus, and it's still a bus stop.
We're at the corner of High Avenue and 11th Street. Main drag. The property, the house was right here. Cherry trees were here. The house was over by where the car is.
Pulling the wagon with the scrap metal, it was taken right here. I was standing about here.
Okay.
And I was pulling a wagon with scrap metal, and I had a little army hat on.
Yep.
And one of the Childs kids, this is where the Clayton Childs lived. And since then, it's the only house left standing on High Street. And they have since cleaned it up for sale. Now, another story I had here, by the way.
It isn't on High Street. It's on 11.
This is on 11, right? In 1948, another thing that happened besides Harry Truman, there was an earthquake. And I was just coming home from ball practice. I came up these very stairs right here, and I was right in the middle of these stairs when the earthquake hit. I remember it having to go to the ground because of the earthquake, because this is how I used to get to my house. But I cut through, and is that a holly tree? Because it was a holly tree back when I lived here.
Yeah.
That's the same holly tree.
Wow.
It was a much smaller one back then, right?
Yeah. And of course, this was not all growing up then. It was all rock-free here. And there was more parking space. Well, what they did, they widened the street parking strip along.
Yeah.
Okay. It was just probably one lane each direction.
Yeah. So, but this is where the Childs lived, and they were close. And Gene and George Strong lived here after the Childs, and they were good friends. I used to babysit with the kids here. This is where I first watched TV. They were the first one in the block to have TV.
Now, where was the car salesman, Crawford?
Well, he was next door. He used that brick.
That brick house.
The brick house next to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you say something about this garage too? Was there?
Well, I have rarely seen the inside of it. I don't think it's been open since 1943. I'd be very curious as to what's inside there.
It's a picker's paradise, probably.
I'm sure it's full. I mean, this thing is coming apart. You see it's rotting. We're standing here on 11th Street, and between High Street and Veneta was the area that I really remember most as growing up into. Right now, we showed you what was left of the Child's house. Right next to that was a big yellow house. I remember an old guy lived there, and he loved to water his lawn. He had the most beautiful lawn in the block. Next to him was a small, I would call it a cabin. It had a coal stove, coal burning stove, and they had chickens. And they had a little house in back. Next to that was another house. Then next to that were two empty lots, and this was actually a depression with the original trees still growing in it. And it was where we came to play. There was a big sand hill right behind there, and I know for a fact there's a dog buried back there.
Oh.
And then the church down there was faced the Vicks house, and they also had a wood-burning stove. Electric stoves didn't really come into being around here until the 50s. And of course, we're looking at an extension on that church right now. And I used to ride my bicycle. In fact, when I was a little kid, I had a little, in fact, it's in that parade picture, that little tin car with the pumps in it. I would pump that up and down the street. And they were building that church in the 40s. And they had chicken wire laying on that sidewalk. And I drove my car over that chicken wire. It came up and poked my eye. And to this day, every time I go to the eye doctor, He says, I see you have a scar in the back of your eye.
Now tell me about your eye doctor.
The eye doctor is Dr. Well, it was Joe Coyle was the physician back then. His son, Terry, became our eye doctor. But Joe Coyle lived up there right on High Street, just a couple blocks from us. And Mom took me up there, and I guess I had a piece of wire in my eye. And he looked at it, pulled out, and says, didn't think there's much damage. You put some ointment on it. But in today's world, there would have been a lawsuit because they left chicken wire laying on the sidewalk. And I don't remember much about it other than going up there and him putting something in my eye. But in fact, my eye with the best vision is that eye, is my left eye.
Oh.
So that's what happened. And that church is also where I went to kindergarten.
Oh.
If one of you still have that plaster cast of my hand, it was done there on the steps around the front of that church. And that's also where Boy Scout Troop 508 met. And we met Boy Scouts there. So as you can tell, we played here in the woods all the time. That was a great place to play. We had trees and bushes and sand hill. It was an old-fashioned play area. You know, we didn't have TV. We went outside and played. And the thing, and this whole block had my friends in it. You know, this whole between 10th and 11th and High Avenida is essentially where all my friends lived.
So name some others. Who else do you remember?
Noe Daigle, Jimmy Shepard. Bill Klopp was actually Bill's friend. David Schramm lived down 2 blocks. And Louis Nothwang and Ron Strong lived up High Street. And those are pretty much the ones I remember the most.
Okay.
But this was definitely the area where we grew up and we played.
Okay.
And there's a lot of fun memories in this area. Not this busy, the street was narrower and the sidewalks wider. Actually, the sidewalks were okay, but we had a parking strip. Back in the 40s, when I was a little kid, probably 8, 9 years old, we're only a block from the High Street house here. This building you're looking at used to be the Coca-Cola bottling plant. And I would come down here during the day and I'd lean on that garage door and watch them bottle a Coke. And it was all in one plant. You'd put the bottles in one end, go through cleaning, come through an inspection station, then it would fill up with the syrup and the CO2, and go to another inspection, and then it'd get packaged. Well, I showed up so often, they started giving me jobs to do, which wouldn't happen in today's world. But I got to put little hooks in the 6-pack carton, and I got actually to put some of the stuff into the machine. Things that could no longer be done in today's environment. And I got to know the guys that would come in and deliver it. But I spent a lot of time here. I got all the free Cokes. And let me tell you, I don't care what they say, the Coke that we drink today is not the Coke we drank in the 40s.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say Coke was better than Pepsi or something like that.
It was a lot better then. And I don't know what was in it, but it's different even though they say it wasn't. So this is the old Coke plant right across the street from
Do you remember, did they move Coke?
I don't know where they moved. They consolidated. You got to remember, back in those days, there weren't that many different versions of pop.
True. Mm-hmm.
And so when they started, Coca-Cola started serving so many different things, I'm sure they moved to a different bigger factory, or consolidated.
But as long as you lived on High Street.
As long as I lived on High Street, it was there.
Coca-Cola.
And I was there for several years after.
So it's 1600, and what street are we on?
This has got to be 12th.
1600, 12th. Okay. And now it's called, what's that? What does it say?
Bremerton Food Line.
Food Line, okay.
So it must be their food bank.
Okay.
All storage and trucks.
And trucks.
You're saying the trucks went in the building?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
There may have been a few parked outside, but I don't remember. And this I believe, was just all blackberries.
That was the secret ingredient.
There you go.
Could be. Behind me is the new Bremerton High School. They are now known as the Knights. When I was going here, we were the Bremerton High Wildcats. And our class still has the dummy of the Wildcat.
Very
our house, our school was totally torn down. And this one built, and all that's left of ours is this piece of wall right here, which is left in memoriam of our old high school. It was built in the 40s, right after the war, and was one of the first $1 million buildings to be built.
What was this the wall to?
This is the wall to the old high school.
Just like the front. Was this
like
the
the
front
front,
side?
yeah.
Okay.
And so this is all that's left. And I was here from 1950 to 1954. And we're only 2 blocks from the High Street house.
Okay.
This could also be part of the original entranceway. Concrete looks about right color.
And the front of the school, that wall you were...
Well, this is one of the side entrances
Yeah.
to the school.
But that wall is just right over there. Okay.